why do children, or rather youth, leave the church? I know that this is an issue that is near and dear to the heart of many people. It seemed like a logical thing to talk about since I knew that many parents out there are looking for the reason that this keeps happening. The reason that I am a good candidate for discussing this particular issue is because I am one of the youth that have left the church. I figured that you might want to know why I did and why everybody that I know in the same boat has done so. What I've noticed is a very common thread that runs through all these sorts of situations is that when parents start noticing kids leaving the church, they suddenly panic and decide that this is not going to happen to their kids, and so they redouble their efforts to ensure that does not happen. And of course, then what does happen? Their kid leaves the church. Happens every time that the parents do that. So what is it that they are doing that is so wrong that causes all this to transpire? Basically, the first thing that I have noticed that is a real problem is the fact that parents who are panicked about whether their kids leave the church or not seem to pressure really hard. They are really dogmatic about their particular beliefs. What makes it even worse is the fact that the parents refuse to study other religions. They don't know what they're up against, but they insist that their kids have to believe the way they do. Now, naturally, as soon as the kid grows older, in their late teens, early 20s, or something like that, they are going to start asking questions. This happens with every single person, whether they leave the church or not. They always start asking questions. If the parent is continually insisting that everything that they say is right, even though they don't give any explanation as to why, and the child discovers that some of the things the parents said were wrong, after they start asking questions, they are going to start learning everything they possibly can about everything that their parent told them not to. This happens every time. Children want to know the truth. If they discover that their parent has been lying to them in any way, shape, or form, children will go and discover what the truth really is. This is why I don't support the idea of teaching children about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, except for as a playful game. It is a form of deceit and lying, and the kid is always hurt by it once they find out. First rule, if you want to avoid getting your kid to leave the church, is stop lying to them. Find out the answers to things before you tell them yes or no, or what they should or should not do. Always know your facts. If you tell them, no, you cannot watch that show because it supports Buddhism, find out what Buddhism even is. Sometimes people think that something supports some religion, and they don't even know why they think that, nor what the religion supports. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like if somebody wants to forbid anime in their particular house, as an example. My favorite anime happens to be Full Metal Alchemist. Let's say they make Full Metal Alchemist off limits. Okay, the reason behind that, I suppose, is because it supports Buddhism, right? Anyone who learns their facts, however, will realize that the only instance of Buddhism that I can recall right offhand in Full Metal Alchemist is the phrase, all is one and one is all. Whereas the same parent is very likely to go and allow something like the Lion King into their house because that is just perfectly innocent, right? In fact, it is a heavy purporter of Buddhism. And I'm surprised that many parents don't realize that. They are being very inconsistent in what they do. As soon as a child starts studying and finding out the answers to their questions, they're going to discover this inconsistency and start wondering what their parent really did. Another big example that I have noticed that seems to be a reoccurring theme amongst children who leave the church is the fact that as soon as children begin to get older, parents start noticing that they are not acting as much like children anymore, and they are starting to make decisions of their own. Decisions the parents don't like, of course. And so the parents, instead of allowing the children to grow up and become who they are, they take it upon themselves to insist that the children make the decisions they want them to make, which frankly from the child's teens to their young adult years is the worst possible time they can do that, because there is no way they can grow up if you insist that they behave as a child, because they are basically pulling out of their mold that they were in for their childhood years and finding out who they really are. If you go so far as to insist that they have no privacy and no freedom to make decisions, they are going to rebel in any possible way that they can do so in order to prove that they are their own being and that they are adults. And many kids do this in the way of going against the parents' religion. This is a very common thing. I have never seen any exceptions to this. Children are like seedlings. We all know that the sun is very harsh on a plant. And so many parents take that to believe that they must protect their seedling children from the sun. Maybe for a period of time, but they actually need the sun to survive. So any parent that goes and paves over their seedling children with concrete is going to find that their children rebel, break the concrete, and push away from it in order to grow up and be in the sun. It happens every time. Protection oftentimes ends up being restriction, more of prison than anything else. This is why so many children end up resenting their parents. There is a modern trend these days where parents are taught to believe that the way the children turn out when they grow up is a reflection of how well their parents raised them. And so if the parents don't raise their children right, then that means that they are terrible people. That is a very recent trend that has not been around for long. It used to be considered that if children turned out one way or another, that was because the children chose to do that themselves. It's only recently that it's been decided that parents are responsible for every little thing their children ever do, never bothering to even stop and consider that their children might be a separate person from themselves and therefore will make their own decisions. Obviously, there have always been rebels. One can never stop one from being rebellious from time to time, but it can be prevented from happening as severely if one just remembers that the child is a separate person, a separate being from who the parent is, and they will indeed make their own decisions, sometimes even about different religions and stuff like that. Another thing that doesn't help at all is when the parent panics after hearing their child's admission of faith that they had changed their religion. So the parent takes it upon themselves to save their child under any possible circumstances, no matter what has to be done. They will preach to the child every chance they can possibly get to bring them back to the fold, or whatever it is that they use as justification. Unfortunately, this tends to have the opposite effect. Your child will start avoiding you if you do this because they hate being preached to. They know everything that you're going to say already. They've already thoroughly considered it. Chances are, like as an example, if your family is Christian and your child chose to be something else, preaching the Bible will not do any good to the child who made the decision. They can quote the Bible right back to you. They know the Bible. They haven't forgotten all of a sudden. They know whatever you brought them up to believe. They haven't forgotten. They have just decided that for some reason or other, you are inconsistent with your beliefs, or something is wrong. Whatever is wrong has turned them off from your religion, and they've chosen their own. The same thing happens in almost every situation where children leave the church, whichever church it is that you profess as the church. They are unhappy about the lack of choice. If you're not giving them any privacy, any choice, anything in order to grow up, then they are probably going to leave the church, or at least rebel in some other way. And the unfortunate thing is that they almost never come back. And even if they do sort of come back, chances are they won't come back all the way. Like if they are raised Catholic, they might come back to being a Christian, but they might come back to being Lutheran instead. So they're not going to likely return to their parents' church. I've never seen that happen. So anyway, I guess that I will wrap this up for now because this is getting rather long. But I hope this was interesting and informative. Feel free to comment and ask me questions. I can always rant again on some other topic if anyone wants. Thank you for watching this, and take care.